for Ireland to boldly go where they've never gone before, i.e. semi-finals or better, they probably need all their key players fitting well, playing well. And it looks as if they're going to be going there a bit battered and bruised. They've already lost David Wallace, as a huge loss, which means they really can't afford to lose Ferris or O'Brien particularly, and Heaslip, because Ireland have never been overly endowed with ball carriers. They've always been dependent on a few, like Keith Wood and Victor Costello and so forth back in the day, and Brian O'Driscoll of course. So they particularly need O'Driscoll back playing well, and O'Brien very much so, those back rowers. And then looking ahead all the way through to particularly the Italian match, which thankfully is under Perspex roof or something, it won't be mucky and wet, but there'll be, Novina's been said that Mike Ross survives until then and survives the 80 minutes that day, and one or two more. So they need all that going for them. They've already lost David Wallace. There's an injury cloud hanging over O'Brien, Darcy, Healy, O'Driscoll heading out. So it's not ideal. And then of course they've lost form as well as and confidence as well as players. The good thing is they start off with America, and I think that'll give them a chance to get their patterns going, playing pretty well, get some bit of confidence back, score a few tries, get that winning feeling, and then Australia game 2 have a lash at it. The odds are against them beating Australia though. I mean, no Irish team has won in the Southern Hemisphere against Tri-Nation sides since 1979 in Australia, and presumably there's a reason for 32 barren years and close on 30 matches, and that's generally because they're better. And right now Australia have just won the Tri-Nations, having beaten New Zealand home and away and South Africa in Durban. And ask yourself, what are the odds in Ireland doing a double over South Africa and doing a double over South Africa and beating the All Blacks? They would be slim. So I think it's going to probably come down to the Italian match. It has that look about it, and then I would still expect Ireland to win that, all things being equal. And the odds are that they would then run into the South Africa in the quarterfinals. Who knows, Wales possibly might spring a surprise, but the odds are it'll be a quarterfinal, and the odds are that they will be making their exit at that point. Anything less than that would be very disappointing, acutely disappointing. Anything better would be fabulous, because it's, again, uncharted territory. No Irish team has ever gone that far before. I just feel that this team was probably at its peak 4 years ago, and that was their chance in a sense. France, better conditions, nearer home, and we all know what happened in 07. So I do think the core of that side were in their mid to late 20s and had 50 odd caps at least under their belts, and that's really what the one they should have made the mark at. If they make a bigger mark at this one, it'll be a hell of an achievement to them all. But realistically, a quarter final would be seen as the par for Ireland in this World Cup, I think. The great thing about the tournament 4 years ago was that Argentina threw a cat amongst the pigeons from the word go, winning the opening match against France, and then just creating a buzz everywhere they went. Was playing brilliant rugby, and they certainly brought a revival to the Garriola, the up and under, and they certainly went for their drop kicks. But when they played well, they had some fabulous players, and they beat France twice and ultimately finished third. They particularly looked like a team pale shadow, as you suspect they would be, from that team 4 years ago. They're going to arrive into the Tri-Nations a bit like Italy's arriving into the Six Nations past their peak, and I don't see any other replacement for them. So a bit boringly, but almost certainly, I think, and the bookies odds reflect this, you're going to have the Tri-Nations 3 in the semi-finals along with the winners of France-England, which is like a playoff in Europe to join the Tri-Nations in the semi-finals. The only team that, Ireland might have a chance, if everything fell in place for them, they might have a chance of upsetting that. Wales could conceivably be this surprise pack at this World Cup. They've got a nice mixture of youth and experience, got some real talent. They seem in good nick. A couple of injuries up front to the forwards. The front row particularly, they're going out with an unfit Gethin Jenkins, and they've got fingers crossed for Adam Jones, and they need them, particularly as their first game up is against South Africa. But if there was to be a surprise in the group stages, that might be the one. They're the one team that could upset that, which of course could conceivably mean Ireland versus Wales in the quarters. But beyond that, I think it's France for England in the quarterfinals, and I think that if you look at it, England the better coach team, but France is the better players. And I've just got this funny hunch that Mark Leverman, for all his foibles, for all his constant changing the team, and Peter de Villiers for a lot of bizarre things, despite all that, they might actually have got this one right in terms of their preparations to the World Cup, and I could see them making the semis, but perhaps not the final. The two best games of the year, by distance, have been the All Blacks in Australia. If all goes to form, that would probably be the final. And as Australia recently highlighted in the Tri-Nations, there might be yet another choke in the All Blacks. They're arguably going to be the advantage of being at home, but there's also disadvantages in that, because if you imagine Munster's search for their holy grail in terms of winning the Heineken Cup and multiply that by a factor of 10, then we possibly have an idea of the kind of pressure the All Blacks are going to be under to deliver, bring New Zealand to their holy grail of a first World Cup since home soil in '87. It's hard to think that Dan Carter though and Richie McCaw are going to go through their careers without winning one World Cup. I still think at home, in a one-off final against Australia, they will be the favourites, and I think it will be good for rugby, the brand of rugby they've played, but it could be a cracking final. And the side of Australia might just spook them a little bit, but I think possibly, probably, the All Blacks will win the World Cup, finally.